Welcome to the Quilt Report. I am Teri Lucas, and I am honored today to be with my friend Linda, who I've known for, gosh,
Oh, it's a few years.
a few years. At least, I want to say at least 10 of my quilting years, maybe even longer.
It's possible because the first time I met you was when I handed you my credit card in Houston and took off and went somewhere else, and you had it.
I
There
had
were
your
no
credit card?
unusual.
That's awesome.
You did, and you didn't do anything with it other than processing my magazine subscription. And I was just like, you have an honest face, so we're good, which is what I wanted you to do. So yeah, so it has been a while. I'm hoping to be back in Houston this year.
Well, if you come, I will try and make it. I did not apply to teach this year, which kind of makes me sad, but whatever. It's all
Yep,
good. So, over the weekend, you and I chatted a little bit, partly because
we
I
did.
am terrible sometimes at answering email. Sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, and you sent me an email right around Thanksgiving, and when I looked through, I kind of went, "This is clever." So, what's the name of your book?
Okay, so the name of the book is called Your Capsule Stash,
Hmm.
and it's a book that I wrote. It's available for sale on my website,
Okay.
and we can do a link in the notes and all of that. It came from a kernel of an idea that I had last year when I was putting together my teaching program for the year. Had an idea that quilters that are like me that have been quilting for
A
a long
long,
time.
a long time.
Every time you go to a quilt shop or a show or whatever, and you see fabrics that you love, and you buy it without necessarily a plan or whatever, and you just keep buying and buying and buying. Well, eventually, what happens is you reach capacity in terms of what you can actually physically store and physically manage.
Mhm.
Um, and during the pandemic, how this got started was I started going through down the rabbit hole of pantry organization um, on YouTube, and I watched pantry video after pantry video after pantry video, and they all kind of went by format, and I kind of got my extra food done, and then there was another season of it, and I went in, and this one was closet videos, and this was how to organize your closet, and I own in the house that I live in, the house that I was married in, the house that I have been in for 40 odd years. I have my own walk-in closet that has a window in it that that is probably the world's smallest walk-in. And I had, and when Mike and I first got married and moved in here, it had one pole and we shared it. Smart man built himself his own closet and he put an organizer system in there for me. And it's been my own closet for a very long time, but it had been, uh, you know, seasons and careers and sizes and up and down and all the way around and everything else. And it took me a while to really get to the point of really being able to pull out all the crap, finally get rid of the stuff from the 80s that I was never going to wear again, either by style or design or whatever else. They don't fit what I do.
Body shape.
And kind of got to that point and then turned around and the next place on the hit list was my sewing room, even though it might look organized to the outside world, was something had gotten to the point that it was overstuffed. And I would walk in here and I could not do anything. I would turn around and I would walk out. And I would
Ooh,
come
that's
in to try to do,
uncomfortable.
that's not a good thing. I
Mm-mm.
would come in, I would look around, I might move pile of fabric, and I would go back downstairs and I would watch a baking video or I would do something else. And it took me a realized I'm like, this is not good. For somebody that has lived in this house for 20 years and didn't have a room like this and revels in it, I was like, okay, there's got to be a reason for it. And what the process that came and started was sort of part of it was an offshoot of the closet videos. Part of it was an offshoot of the pantry videos. And part of it was just finally realizing, what do I really want to spend my time working on?
Right.
And what is not, you have a finite amount of time. What am I going to do? Am I going to be knitting? No. Am I going to be cross stitching my eyes? That boat has kind of sailed, unfortunately. Um, you know, it was just, there were a whole category, it was just, it was too much. And so I really kind of had to pull everything apart, look at it at a granular level. And when I say I've been shopping and buying fabric that I love for all those years, when you would go into a quilt shop or a store and you would see like a whole line, I wasn't somebody that bought a coordinated set of fat quarters. I would buy a yard or two of the hero print in the line, and with the assumption that I would find something that would make it work later on.
Right.
Okay. Well, I wound up with a whole bunch of hero prints and nothing went with them. So that kind of didn't work. And that was sort of like, okay, we need to put together some kind of sensible piece of this, coupled with the coven quilts that I like to make. Something that's going to, A, stop the insanity, and B, basically rebalance everything so that I went back to being able to do it.
Right.
And I've gotten to that point, and that kind of came with the idea of the capsule stash,
Okay.
which is basically a list of basically the essentials.
And,
And
and what are those essentials for you?
for me, I want to play with the fabric that I have been collecting for all these years and that I have loved. And part of it was realizing that the most efficient way to organize it is to break it down by sizes. So the stuff that I bought for backings,
Mm-hmm.
the yardage, the fat quarter collection, and then the scraps, those all serve different purposes, and you kind of need to have a smattering of everything. But to try to work with it and put them together in what I find are interesting color combinations.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen my work before. You know that I like to work with a lot of quilts that have interesting backgrounds and a lot of low volumes. I mean, you can make I've done this before. You can make a singular quilt with a singular cut of fabric for a backing,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a perfectly lovely quilt. I get excited about it when I start mixing it up and I start adding in the grays and the blues and the tins, or not the blues, the grays and the beiges and all the other stuff. And I just think it makes a more interesting piece. And so that's the kind of thing that I like to do. So there's that. I've augmented what I have with a line of solids that kind of, you can always kind of get more mileage and more bang for the buck. I'm not somebody that really, I don't actually know if I've ever made a whole solid quilt. I tend to use them sprinkling in. Um, but it can give you a little bit more mileage in terms of doing that.
Yeah.
Um, and then using color theory and things like a color wheel and such like that, which I found out in this. I had 3 copies of one, and actually one of them now lives in my closet to help me out over there.
Shocking.
But basically gets you some kinds of gives you more mileage and more ways to go creatively. So you're not looking at this and you're not feeling stuck.
Right.
And then the other part of the process is, okay, so this is the stuff you love, you want to keep. These are the projects you want to work with. This is what you do. What do you do with everything else? What do you do with the classes that spent money on, took a class, didn't like it, aren't going to continue and aren't going to finish the project, whatever else.
Right.
All of that represents knowledge that you've gained about yourself along the way. And
Right.
that knowledge is what the value of the class is, because it can say, I want to do this. I never want to try this again. And either of those are perfectly valid, and there could be a lot of different reasons why that happens. Um, but doing it, when I went through my fabrics, I was shocked at how many bins of categories went away. I
Oh,
no longer have Christmas novelty fabrics. I don't make a lot of Christmas quilts. I can use colors that are traditional colors or not traditional colors, but I don't have a lot of fabric there. I found somebody in my guild that was actively looking for fabric that would um, feed what she was doing for a Christmas bazaar. And I said, if you want to come to the house, I have a whole bag of it. You are more than welcome to have all of it. It's all 100% cotton. And she's like, really? Yeah. Got rid of another bag. All of my juvenile fabrics are gone. The baby quilts have been made. Well, actually, that's not particularly true. I have one little stash left. But not that I'm expecting any more grandchildren. Five is plenty. But that has all I was like, I don't collect it, I don't sell for it. It's gone. Um, what was really surprising is about the time that you and I first met, I was working and I was doing a lot of work with boutiques. And I had, in fact, had spent a little bit of time at with one of the fabric companies as one of the brand ambassadors.
right.
And after I stopped doing that, I took all of my boutiques from all the different lines and I shoved them into a probably the largest container you can get and shoved it under my desk. And I was like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to play with it. I don't want to do anything with it. Where it sat for 2.5 years. I could kick it if I wanted to look at it. I didn't look at it. There wasn't anything in there calling my name. I get out one morning. I came in here and I was like, the process was starting because everything was everywhere and there was no sense of it. And my husband would walk in here and he would look at it and he would just turn around and leave. He's like, okay, whatever this is, you're in the middle of it. It's a smart man.
Wise indeed.
Yes, I can do really stupid things in the morning before that coffee is kicked in. Because I took that bin of fabric and I took it out from under the desk, out into the middle of the floor, and I dumped it out.
You didn't.
I did. I did.
Did you
And the
touch
reason,
every piece?
no, because I looked at it and my original gut reaction was, yeah, over it. It's not anything I want. And so I looked at it and there were, when I think of batik fabrics, what tends to get me excited are like the jewel tones, the beautiful brights, the Caribbean colors, the turquoises, and those are what I really love. I do have a
Yeah.
small sampling of that I have kept. The rest of this stuff was not anything I was going to work with and whatever else. And I basically took it into two piles. The stuff that was yard dish, because I did not take the time to measure any of it. I
Right.
basically made yardish and half yard-ish piles, and I had basically two stacks. Took a couple of photographs. Coffee might have kicked in at this point because I'm like, I do not want to sell this piecemeal. I don't want to, the amount of time and energy I would have to expend on this piecemeal would be insane. Took a couple pictures, posted them on my Instagram account, and my Instagram account is not terribly active. Yeah, it's a 2025 goal with the hashtag DStash. And basically said, this is a lot sale. This is approximately what I have. I'm not cutting it. I'm not setting it. You want it, you buy the whole damn thing and buyer pay shipping. And I gave one price that I thought was I'm like, was less than it was close to $300, which when I looked, if I did it by calculated by yard, it's crazy. 24 hours later, money was in my account and they were on a plane to Washington State to somebody that had never was not a regular follower on my account. She found me through the DStash hashtag. She wanted the whole thing. I had the money in the account. We were good. And that was like, I was like, I can't believe that was that easy to do just because it was the whole category. Um, and that just was like, it wasn't the most amount of money, but what it was that much less stuff to manage. It was, I got rid of the guilt. I get rid of the, I don't want to work with it. So that sort of like started things kind of rolling downhill. There were a couple things with the way the studio was, the sewing room. I have a hard time with the word studio. There were a couple things with the way the sewing room
So
was lit.
press pause for a second
Yes, ma'am.
in your train of thought.
Yeah.
You have a quilting studio. You have a quilting studio. So in your studio, go ahead and own that. I'm all for owning whatever word that is going to allow us as quilt makers to A, take ourselves seriously, but also be the professional that we want to be. So studio sounds, it has that connotation. So just
Okay. Just own it. Okay.
Mhm.
Because it's you. So in my studio, I had a desk that was too big and it was cutting off my circulation when I wanted to get into the design wall. And I couldn't use half the design wall because it had an 18-inch wide walk space and I needed 19 on a good day. So it was like there was stuff that was over there, but I couldn't really get to it.
Right.
So I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, let's see what we can do. And basically, I took off an extension and moved the desk down, and life has been good since then. And now we have a place over there for the dance party. But basically, what I used for that is I have a whole, I basically started just, if it was going out of the studio, it was going there. And it
Right.
gave me a place that I could put, and there was stuff that was there, projects that I wasn't going to use, tools that I wasn't going to, and literally, I went through everything. It was a little scary. I mean, I emptied the closet and rarely do people see what's in my closet. Um,
Right.
it's just no. And I just got to the point of the more I did it and the more I was like, better I felt. And it was like, I feel like I can actually like breathe. And then I came in here one day and I actually sewed and it was like, oh my
Brilliant.
God, this is not, and it was just like natural thing. It wasn't like I came to it and I've got a deadline or because that's usually what motivates me. I was actually able to um just come in and do it for the sake of doing it, which is kind of one of the things I have always struggled with. When you work in the industry professionally and you run a business that's primarily online, you come in here in the morning and it's like, do I hit for the sewing machine or sewing machine's over there, sewing machine, or do I hit for the computer? And it's a constant struggle. So this was like, okay, this is going to work for me. And so what's left here are fabrics that I want to play with,
Right.
um, that I have either long-term plans for or I will find a plan for. I just laid out my 2025 calendar for what I want to do for classes I want to bring to market, patterns I want to finish. I didn't do any in 2023 or 2024, and I've got two that I want to put on the calendar for 25. Um, I'm a So Kind of Wonderful certified instructor, and I've got a sew along that I'm doing for one of their patterns next
Right.
year. So I have put those building blocks in place and I have them. The other category that I had to really be ruthless for because literally the room is the room and I have no more space for it. The studio is the studio. I have no more space for it. Is books because I had been, for as long as I've done quilting, there was a book to go with it was either a pattern, there was a book or whatever. And I had a lot of them and a lot of them had not been used, had not been opened, and they weren't things that I was interested in doing. So my guild has an annual book sale, and they got two bankers boxes worth of books that I wanted to put into the hands of other people that
Right.
could use it. because not everybody is I tend to be very comfortable with consuming content online, and if I want something, I could print it, but not everybody is. There is value on having books to actually sit down with a cup of tea, turn off the blue light, and do that. The only category of the books that I did not go through were any of my machine quilting books.
Okay.
Because yeah, so it's an area that I'm still working on. But so by getting rid of the books, it went from four books, four shelves of books in my book on my room to a shelf and a half.
Oh,
So that's really curating and keeping the ones that I loved or referred to, or I do have a couple of lectures that are history based, and I kept all of the history books. But in terms of techniques and things like that, I mean, they're well written, well researched books. They're just not anything that I do. And I buy very few books these days
okay.
of any genre. I don't subscribe. Magazines, I will hit up the free table at Guild and I will pick up a couple. I'll take them home, I'll read them, and then the following month I'll bring them back and somebody else will pick up. But I can't remember the last time that I bought a quilting magazine or even looked at them. So that's kind of, which might be something I want to look into later, but so that was kind of what that was. So that's kind of the whole process, and it took me probably about, I would say probably 4 months to go through this,
Mm-hmm.
to really kind of sit with everything. Did I want it? And then we're talking, paperwork goes with running a business, and do I really need all of this stuff? And then there's this and then there's that. And do I really need a whole bin of zippers when I really have a small little Ziploc bag of them? So when I was done with this, I took all of the empty containers down to the basement where they still live. Because eventually we will use them as room for something. And I think the bins were actually part of the problem. Because if I saw a category, I stuck it in a bin and put a label on it, and it didn't really serve its purpose for me.
No, no, actually, so um I I have small bins in my that I can actually see from here, and one of the things that I know that it does is it obscures my view of what I have. And so I can see if you've got bins of varying sizes that they can obscure what you have. And so you have no recall because it's in a box with a lid on it.
Mhm.
And I think in our brains, it's in a box with a lid on it. We don't need to think about it. So like I have a I have this love for orange. I'm sure you're shocked, for purple and orange. And I can see where I've bought the same purple and orange a few times. But also as you're going through categories, I loved that because you really took a look at what you like, what you don't like, what you
Mhm.
use, and what no longer serves you. And
And it's kind of, yeah.
and part I what I love about that is it's it is essentially taking an inventory of where you are right now as a quilt maker and going yay or nay. And essentially part of what I'm hearing is that you essentially took power and authority over your sewing space, your studio, so that it functions for who you are.
Yes, very much so. I didn't come at it with saying that I have all this fabric, I have to sew it up and I can't buy any more fabric until I'm done. And I hear that. Um, and it's also recognizing that there are certain things that I am drawn to and there are certain things that I'm not. Um, and I had to laugh because I got to send you a picture afterwards. The Avarian quilt that I designed this year, or that I didn't design it, it's a pattern from So Kind of Wonderful, but I did it. And there is teal in it, but the overwhelming color that you see in it is orange.
Oh, I love that.
And it's absolutely, you would never I look at it and it is so calming and so relaxing. And I'm like, there's a lot of orange in that. I can't quite make my brain work with that, but I'll send you a picture afterward. It's an interesting tweak. So Cheryl's got it in Florida now to work her magic on it. So came up with the idea of this, and I talk to quilters all the time, and members of online forums and such, and I know that this is a problem that a lot of us run into. Bought it on sale, somebody passed away, which is the other part of it is there's because of the demographic that we serve, we are finding that there is groups of us that are having to downsize, or I regularly get contacted by somebody. My mother was a quilter and I have all her stuff and I don't know what to do with it. And, so that's a problem. I had a friend of mine that also was going through this on a parallel track, and we talked about it. And she basically just didn't have the bandwidth to do anything other than gather up everything. We had 13 bags of it, put it on Facebook Marketplace for free, and it was gone in 24 hours. And that's not, I admired her efficiency. That may have been where I get the idea to do that, to do my boutique sale, because it was like, okay, there's more than one way to do this. But in terms of that, it was like, okay, there are ways to be able to do it. So I put together this outline, and I put together what I thought would be an interesting guild presentation that people would be interested in. It's a different perspective. It's not necessarily the only thing to do. There are certainly a lot of people that are kind of coming. It's a topic of discussion at this point. And when I announced it at the teachers forum that I was doing it at, hands shut up all the way around the room when I asked the question. I said, "So how do you store your ugly fabric?" And there's a whole chapter and there's a whole section of the book about what ugly fabric is. And I'm not calling anybody's fabric ugly, but we all have fabric that isn't quite our cup of tea, but it can serve a very important function in the sewing room, and you should have it. And literally, I have a bin that is labeled ugly fabric, and if something goes in there, it might be something that I pick up at the guild table. It might be something that somebody passes over to me. It's great for, among other things, testing out a block, testing out new threads, tensions, all the stuff that goes on it before you actually dig into your good fabric for your project. You want to be able to do this, and as long as it's 100% cotton, it's all going to work together. So I asked that question, and it was like a tsunami. It was like all kinds of people came over and they wanted to ask me. They had never thought about it that way, but the more I thought about it, that kind of generated a lot of interest. And your capsule stash has turned into what is at this point my biggest presentation on the books for 2025, and my books are open for 2026 in terms of guilds wanting to hear me.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons I wanted the laptop in terms of the desktop, because I can pump up the virtual presentation, so I can give it virtually on Zoom to a
Right.
guild that's meeting in Tennessee or in Illinois, in addition to going and speaking with a group where I'm on a screen and all of that. So I did that. And the ebook came with the idea of, if you're going to go to listen to a presentation, it's going to be entertaining because I'm a good speaker, and it's a subject that I know a lot of people have a lot of interest in. And you might make a few notes, but you're going to get back to your room and you're going to, something, life can happen, and it might not happen that week, it might not happen for 6 months, but you're going to be looking for something to sort of help you with as a guide, is sort of some of the things that you want to come back with. So that's where the idea of the Capsule Stash ebook came from. I was like, okay, if I'm looking for a digital product to bring out, this would actually support what has become a very popular presentation.
Great.
And then, we could create, I could put things in there that would people would find useful. I could give them a checklist for packing list for a quilt retreat, because how many people have gone on quilt retreats and gotten there and realized, oh crap, I left this, I left that, whatever. The other one I did is for people that want to participate in a shop hop, which have been very popular lately, but they walk in the door of a quilt shop and they immediately get this clawing feeling around their thing. I shouldn't be here. I have so much already. I can't use it. I shouldn't be here. I'll go wait in the car. And that's no fun. And that takes away from all of that. So
Right.
what I did was I sat down, I said, okay, let's keep working with that. There are things that you can buy in quilt shop that are not fabric that you are going to consume. You're going to use sewing machine needles,
Yeah.
rotary blade cutters. Can we
Yeah.
get an amen on that one? We hoard them like they're gold. They make our sewing more accurate, easier on our bodies, and better ergonomically.
Mhm.
And most of us won't change our rotary blade on Wednesday when it's January 1st. So you could always go and you could buy a rotary blade from a quilt shop owner. You could buy sewing machine needles if they looked at it's kind of consumable types of things that you would use for, which means you don't have to get left out of all the fun. You can also make a shopping list of, okay, these are the next 3 or 4 projects, and I have everything I need except I need batting. I have everything I need except I need backing, and I'm not going to piece it or whatever. So it kind of puts you into looking at it in terms of where your money can be spent better,
Mhm.
um, and still getting you to participate in it. So for quilt shop owners or people that work in quilt shops that are saying, she's saying, don't ever buy fabric. Again, that's exactly the opposite. I'm actually wanting to get people to the point that they enjoy the fabricology, they enjoy it, but understand that when you're buying a hero fabric in a line and you're not buying necessarily a back order set, that there's a reason why the fabric companies spend all the money that they do and the resources to bring all of these fabrics together, and the lines all work and all of that stuff. Sometimes you can cross lines and do different things and sometimes you don't, but there are different ways to be able to work with that. So that's sort of like, it's actually to empower people to get them back, but also to have them be much more aware of what it is they're spending their money on.
Right.
Bring the fun back.
Well, yes. Partly, I think I agree. You're heading in that beautiful direction of bringing the fun of shopping back. And I love your honesty here about the tendency to purchase the hero fabric and not any of the supporting cast, which I like. All right, I have worked in 2 different quilt shops, and I have a really good relationship right now with my local. I'm pointing in the direction of my shop. It's like
Okay.
actually 2 miles down the road. And I have a gift. And some of it is based on experience. Because when
Mm-hmm.
I first started buying fabric, I was buying quarter yards, thinking, oh, I'll be able to get this again, which that's not how any of this works, unless it's a solid fabric. But even then, sometimes it's a little dicey. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so one of the things that I always talked with quilters about is if you love this line, buy at least 3 or 4 pieces that go with it, because then what you've got is you have these things that are already going together, and then it makes pulling from your stash for things to go with it a whole lot easier, right?
Right, because then you have a mini quilt shop here, which, I mean, we've all joked about it, as opposed to all of the hero things, which you can put one or maybe two, but most of us aren't comfortable with doing that kind of, you know, all that crazy, you need something to break it up.
Right.
So,
And this is why, like, I would encourage buying a little bit broader, because you also need, like, the hero prints tended to be the larger prints, or the busier prints. And I'm not saying that in a negative connotation. It's just it's the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's the attractive fabric.
Mhm.
Supporting cast, though, it's often in different scale, so it gives you visual interest.
Yep.
And so part of what you're saying is head in that direction too. Buy some of the supporting cast. Don't leave
Mhm.
don't leave all the bridesmaids there. And I love that you took several whole categories of fabric right out. Like like the recognition that you weren't going to do anything with your batiks or your Christmas, right? So you can look at a whole category and go, yeah, no. And let it go in some kind of way that gives you the freedom to really have what makes your heart happy. And the thing that showed me very clearly that it made your heart happy is that you went in there one day and just sewed. Like,
Yeah, it's like I had gotten enough of it that I could actually do it. Now, I have one in my 2025 list of quilts. I have one quilt that is batik, and that is it's pastelli batiks. But I have now discovered where that quilt is going,
mhm,
and it gives me a purpose to be able to know what I'm going to do with that, and finish that. And then when that is done, there might be a round two of what's left, or I might find a girlfriend that wants to do it. The other strategy that I use is if you've got a group of girlfriends that are all going through this,
mhm,
or a guild, this could actually be an interesting guild program. Um, you can say, okay, I have this, I'm not interested in it. I'm looking for that. And see if you can rebalancing it without actually having to spend any money. But basically sharing it, pushing it around and sharing the wealth.
right.
So, there's that way that you can do it too.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna companion you with somebody. I just did a book report with Patty Murphy, who wrote a book called Zero Waste Quilting.
Oh,
Yes. So she
let's
she
go back
lets
and look
you,
at that one.
yes, I think actually I think you would love it. Because part of what she does is she looks at what she has in a quilt. Sometimes she will go buy, if she needs something, she will go add some to her stash. So she's not completely like taking that out of her worldview. But like, all right, I have this and I have this left over. What else can I do with it? So I have the practice blocks. I can make, and she goes through a list, she shows you with each big quilt that she has three or four other projects that she's using with that fabric, so she's not wasting any of it. And then with all of her smaller scraps, um, like strings, little tiny pieces, when she needs to make pillow forms, she puts that in with batting.
Yep.
So she's making her own pillow forms and giving
Yep.
them some, some bulk. And as
Giving more. Yeah.
right, so you're getting longevity out of the fabric that you're using.
Right, and you're not buying 3 yards of fabric using a yard plus, and then the rest of it just sits on the shelf because there's no move it down the line and do that. I'll have to take a look at that book report because I know it's online on your channel. But yeah, it's kind of the same type of an idea. So that's kind of where I came up with it. It had a interesting launch, and we talked about that off camera. Um, but I activated the newsletter mailing list, and I have it's been well received. And the the way the program is supposed to work now is when I will go into doing a program for Guild, whether it's by Zoom or whatever else, they will get emailed that, by the way, if you want more information about this, or if this would be something that you would find useful, this is available at, it's a relatively modest price point because it's all PDF instant print. It's not, I don't have to ship anything. So, and then it gets there and they have the ability to share the lists, share this and that. And there's a third iteration of this coming next year.
Ooh, we'll
Yeah.
have to do another book report.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that. That's no problem. It's not really a book, but okay, we can talk about it.
I,
I'll come back and talk with you anytime.
of course you will, because I'm fun.
You
Uh,
are.
Linda, I read the more I talk with you about this, like, we were instant messaging, or we were messaging behind the scenes, and I was literally on my phone flipping through your book, and I'm like, this is delightful. Uh, Partly because like I just missed an email, like I don't know where November, December went. But as I'm flipping through and I'm going, this is a really good way. This is also a really good way of looking at our stashes and going, what makes sense now? What doesn't
Hmm.
make sense? And how do I look at it? And I think part of what I like about how you're presenting it is it's a healthy way of looking at our stashes for who we are in this moment. And we're not shaming ourselves for purchasing anything else or not purchasing in a way that made sense because we all I know like when I lived in New York at some point I went through my stash too.
Hmm.
um I went through all my books at one point. I was a charter member of AQS. I gave all my magazines away. Like I brought them to a guild thing and I'm like, here you go. uh,
Yeah.
in part because it frees up some space in our brains to actually be able to do like what makes sense for us now.
And I think a lot of it in terms of the with books and specifically magazines, so much of the content delivery system is it's changed for all of us. I mean, over the Christmas holiday break, I actually cracked open a book because I was going to figure out how I cracked open a cookbook because I wanted to know how to, at age 60 plus, finally make a pie crust. Don't throw the book away. I it was an unmitigated disaster. But Mike said try it. Oh yeah, I flubbed it badly. But it was the first time I had actually consciously made myself some tea, sat down, and actually gone through a book because most of the time I'm on Pinterest. I'm like, okay, I need a quick and easy recipe for this or whatever. And so that's the way I do that's the way a lot of my content gets consumed by me. And I think that a lot of us have gotten to that point.
Right.
So, in terms of how books are delivered, books and all of that are done, it's go the way the market is going.
Hmm.
Um, and I just being the way to do this was just actually something that would help people along the way, but I didn't have to do a huge outlay of cash to go do self-publish or anything else. Yeah, so I've been pleased with the reception to it. I think it will help a lot of people to kind of look at what they have, what they're spending their time doing. It's not a zero sum game where you're going to use it all up and be done with it. It's how much fun are you going to have with it.
And I would also encourage you then to, um, as you're talking with the quilters, plant the seed. And maybe this is more of what you do for 2026 is when something happens to you, what are you going to do? Like, what are the directives
Yep,
for the stash?
yep.
Um, be, eh, you probably have talked with Mike about this. I haven't talked with Bob. He'll deal with it. Like, I don't, in one sense, I don't care. Um, if he wants to just put it all out on the front yard and say, come and take it, I am happy with it. But for some people, it matters to them. And I'm telling you, one of the things that I've seen, there have been very few like estate sales where the family has any idea of the value, the monetary value
Yep.
of what is sitting in that room.
That's true. And even Mike, the only thing that isn't in my room at this point is the actual finished quilts that are the samples or whatever else. They don't fit in here. They just don't. And there's, I could do a scan. There's not a square inch here. Um, and I've started to think about, okay, so, the stuff that is done, how do we do it? One thing I've been able to do is that when I do a quilt challenge
Hmm.
for a guild or an online group or whatever, I have a whole presentation that's built around my challenges. So every time I finish a challenge, I know that it's automatically adding new content to the program. So if somebody is seeing it 5 years ago, it's going to be a little bit different from what it is now. But
Hmm.
it means that that has a revenue stream-ish type of a thing, because that continues to be an interesting part of it. And I can expand on, I can add in um the so kind of one, I can add in and do all of that. So that part of it is doing it, but I've become very picky about the quilts that I'm making. Where are they ultimately going? My sons and my daughters-in-law don't necessarily want that. Hadley has got her own vibe, which this is really funny. My granddaughter and I made her first quilt together this year. And it was a shop challenge that we were working with, and she came to it, and I read the thing. I said, you can do this, and I will make sure we'll do with this. So she comes in, and I'm like, okay, so you get to go pick your fabric, and I've got the whole ball of fabric right there. And I'm like, anything you see that you want, you can have. Whatever you want, it's there, as long as it's not in a plastic bin, because plastic bin means it's already for a thing. And she like a beeline. Remember what I said about I don't make solid quilts? Hadley to a beeline, like right to the solids in my Kona stash. And I'm like, okay, want to encourage her. She has to find her own voice. Okay. Can I interest you in a little bit of pattern? This is lady over here called Tulip Pink, and she's got some really fun colors. No, Nana, that's okay. I'm like, okay,
But you know
it's going
what?
to be,
I I started work when I started quilting, I started working in solids,
yeah,
and I came back to that. And part of it for me is I love the machine quilting. So for me it makes sense.
right.
But solids done well, ooh, like they can be just as playful.
it it actually is something I should probably make a stretch of doing that, just to see how what it would come out like.
There's your
Stretch.
next challenge.
It is unfortunately the 20 my June 2020 5 challenge that's due in June will be finished tonight. It was like I needed a short little project, and I'm like, this is good, this is done. So we're here.
Hey, there you go. Which means that
So
you can sit with the pattern for a couple of months and just make sure it is exactly how you want it.
yep.
Yeah.
So and on to the next one. So
Thank you, Linda, for coming and joining me today and talking about your book. And the title again is
your capsule stash. Hang on a minute. Like any good author, I have a copy of it. It is an ebook. It's a
up a little
PDF
higher.
download. Up a little higher. Okay, so
Yep.
it's a PDF download. So it comes with, I think it's 30 odd pages, and it comes with checklists and ideas for your ugly fabric. It comes for shopping lists that you can take with you to your quilt shop. When you don't think you need to buy anything in a quilt shop, I can find ways for you. And it also has a project layout sheet that I use for all the projects that I use. Helps me keep everything controlled in one spot so that I can do that. So it's available. I'll email Teri the link so she can find it. And thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
I love chatting with you too. Thank you so much. And I am just so grateful to have you on the book report. So thank you,
I
Linda.
was
And join me next time on the book report. I'll be reviewing something. Not quite sure what yet, but there's things. Now,
Fine, we'll talk to you later.